How does a single New Year's kiss meant for closure turn into the evidence that ends a marriage, wrecks reputations, and sets off a legal storm? Why did my husband stand so still at the entrance, recording everything, while I thought I was only performing for the crowd? I never imagined that one moment of laughter before midnight would become the first line in my divorce order. The rooftop party sparkled with city lights and champagne glasses, but all I could think about was the text message burning in my pocket. "Can't wait to see you tonight, Eirlys. It's been too long." Graham Roche had sent it 3 hours ago, and I'd read it 17 times since. I smoothed my black dress, the one Malcolm said made me look overdressed for everything, and checked my phone again. 11:47 p.m. Malcolm was supposed to be here by now, but his transit inspector job always seemed to conveniently interfere with anything I actually wanted to do. "You look amazing tonight," Jessie whispered in my ear, her voice slightly slurred from the open bar. "That dress is killer." I forced a smile and scanned the crowd again. Graham stood near the champagne fountain, his city council aide badge still clipped to his jacket pocket. Even at a New Year's Eve party, he looked important, powerful. Everything Malcolm wasn't. "Thanks. I needed to feel good tonight, you know." "Where's Malcolm?" Clara asked, appearing beside us with 2 glasses of Prosecco. "Fashionably late as always." "Work emergency," I lied smoothly. The truth was, I'd deliberately given him the wrong start time. Told him the party began at midnight when it actually started at 10. I needed time to talk to Graham alone, to get the closure I deserved after our relationship ended 6 months ago. My phone buzzed. "Malcolm. Just finished at the station, on my way. Traffic is terrible downtown." Perfect. That gave me at least 20 more minutes. "Ladies, I need some air," I announced, already moving toward the champagne fountain, where Graham waited with that knowing smile that used to make my knees weak. "Eirlys." His voice was warm honey, exactly like I remembered. "You came." "Of course I came. You invited me, remember?" I accepted the glass he offered, our fingers brushing deliberately, though I'm surprised you had the guest list access for a party this exclusive. Graham's smile widened. "Perks of working zoning permits for the city. The developer owed me a favor." He gestured toward the glittering skyline. "Beautiful view, isn't it? Almost as beautiful as you." I felt my cheeks flush. When was the last time Malcolm had called me beautiful? When was the last time he'd called me anything besides Eirlys in that flat, tired voice? "Graham, about us. I know. You're married. But that doesn't mean we can't be friends, does it?" His hand found my elbow, guiding me toward a quieter corner of the rooftop. "I've missed talking to you. Really talking." The champagne bubbles tickled my throat as I drank, liquid courage warming my chest. "I've missed it too. Malcolm doesn't... He doesn't understand me the way you do." "He never did." Graham's voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Remember how we used to talk for hours? About your dreams, your plans? When was the last time he asked about your dreams?" I couldn't remember. Lately, our conversations revolved around Niamh's school schedule, mortgage payments, and Malcolm's endless complaints about budget cuts at the transit authority. "It's complicated," I said, but even as I spoke, I was leaning closer to Graham. He smelled like expensive cologne and ambition, nothing like Malcolm's utilitarian soap and coffee breath. "It doesn't have to be." Graham's eyes searched mine. "We're both adults. We both know what we want." The crowd around us grew louder as midnight approached. Someone had turned up the music, and couples were pairing off, preparing for the traditional countdown kiss. I glanced toward the entrance, looking for Malcolm's familiar silhouette, but saw only strangers. 10 minutes to midnight," the DJ announced, and the crowd cheered. Graham moved closer, his hand sliding from my elbow to my waist. "Dance with me." I should have said no. Should have stepped away, found Jessie and Clara, made small talk until Malcolm arrived. Instead, I let Graham pull me into the swaying crowd of couples, let his arms circle my waist as we moved to the slow jazz filtering through the speakers. "This feels right," he murmured against my ear. "Doesn't it?" It did feel right, natural, like coming home after a long, exhausting journey through a marriage that had become more obligation than joy. "Graham," I started to protest, but his thumb was tracing circles on my lower back, and the champagne was making everything soft and golden around the edges. 5 minutes to midnight." The crowd pressed closer around us, everyone jockeying for position to kiss their partners when the clock struck 12. Graham's hands tightened on my waist, and I found myself looking up into his dark eyes. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said quietly, "even after you chose him, even after the wedding." "You were at my wedding," I whispered, remembering how he'd sat in the back row, watching as I promised to love Malcolm forever. "Biggest mistake of my life was letting you go the first time." His forehead touched mine. "I won't make that mistake again." 2 minutes to midnight. I should have pulled away, should have remembered my daughter sleeping safely in her bed, trusting that her parents would still be married in the morning, should have remembered the man who worked double shifts to pay for this dress, who was probably fighting traffic right now to get to me. Instead, I let Graham cup my face in his hands. 1 minute to midnight. The crowd began counting down from 60, voices rising in excitement. Graham's thumb traced my cheekbone, and I felt myself melting into his touch. 30 seconds. I glanced once more toward the entrance, some last vestige of conscience making me look for my husband. The crowd was too thick, the lighting too dim. If Malcolm was here, I couldn't see him. 20 seconds. Graham's lips were inches from mine, his breath warm against my skin. "This is our moment, Eirlys, our second chance." 10, 9, 8. The crowd roared around us, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. 7, 6, 5. Graham's hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer. 4, 3, 2. I closed my eyes and leaned in. 1, Happy New Year. Our lips met as fireworks exploded over the city skyline, and for 43 perfect seconds, I forgot everything else existed. I forgot about Malcolm, about Niev, about the life I'd built and the promises I'd made. There was only Graham's mouth on mine, his hands in my hair, and the taste of champagne and possibility. When we finally broke apart, both breathless and laughing, I felt more alive than I had in years. "Happy New Year, beautiful," Graham whispered, his forehead pressed against mine. "Happy New Year," I breathed back, my hand still fisted in his shirt. It wasn't until I opened my eyes and saw the flash of a phone camera that I remembered we weren't alone. Jessie stood 10 feet away, grinning as she lowered her phone. "That was so sweet," she called out over the music. "I got the whole thing on video." My stomach dropped, but Graham just laughed and spun me around. "Let them watch," he said. "Let the whole world watch. I'm not hiding how I feel about you anymore." The crowd began to disperse, couples wandering toward the bar or the dance floor. I should have felt guilty, should have been panicking about the video Jessie had taken. Instead, I felt giddy, reckless, more beautiful and desired than I had in years. "I should find Malcolm," I said, but made no move to leave Graham's arms. "Should you?" His hand settled on my hips, possessive and warm. "Or should you stay here with someone who actually appreciates you?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text. "Malcolm. Here, where are you?" I looked toward the entrance and froze. Malcolm stood in the doorway, his work clothes rumpled, his face expressionless as he scanned the crowd. Even from across the rooftop, I could see his phone in his hand, the screen glowing. "Shit," I whispered, stepping back from Graham. "He's here." Graham followed my gaze and smiled that confident smile that had first attracted me to him. "So? You're allowed to have friends, aren't you?" But something in Malcolm's stillness, in the way he held his phone, made my skin crawl. How long had he been standing there? What had he seen? "I need to go to him," I said, already moving away from Graham. "Eirlys, wait." Graham caught my hand. This doesn't have to change anything. We're adults. We can handle this. I wanted to believe him, wanted to stay in this bubble of champagne and desire where Malcolm's disapproval couldn't touch me. But my husband's eyes had found mine across the crowd, and something in his gaze made me shiver. "I'll call you," I promised Graham, then pushed through the crowd toward Malcolm. He watched me approach with that same expressionless calm, his phone now tucked away in his jacket pocket. "Having fun?" he asked when I reached him, his voice perfectly neutral. "It's a party, Malcolm. Yes, I'm having fun." I tried to sound casual, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. "Sorry you missed midnight. Work ran late." "Station emergency. Took longer than expected." His eyes searched my face, and I wondered if I looked as guilty as I felt. "Who were you dancing with?" "Graham Roach. Remember him? We used to date years ago. He works for the city council now." "I remember." Malcolm's voice remained carefully neutral. "Interesting coincidence running into him here." "Not really. He helped organize the party through his work connections." The lie came easily, practiced. "Small world, you know." Malcolm nodded slowly, his gaze drifting past me toward the champagne fountain where Graham was now talking to another woman. Very small world. Something in his tone made me nervous, but before I could analyze it further, Jessie appeared at my elbow. "Malcolm, you made it!" She threw her arms around him in a champagne-scented hug. "You just missed the most romantic midnight kiss. Eirlys looks so beautiful." The blood drained from my face, but Malcolm just smiled politely. "Did she? I'm sorry I missed it." "Don't worry, I got it all on video," Jessie bubbled on, oblivious to the tension crackling between Malcolm and me. "I'll tag you both when I post it. It was so sweet." "That's very thoughtful of you," Malcolm said, his smile never wavering. "I'd love to see it." The ride home was silent, except for the hum of tires on wet pavement. Malcolm drove with his usual careful precision, hands at 10 and 2, eyes fixed on the road ahead. I stared out the passenger window, watching the city lights blur past, and tried to convince myself everything would be fine. It was just a kiss, a moment of nostalgia, of closure. Malcolm hadn't even seen it happen. He'd been stuck at the entrance when midnight struck, and even if Jessie posted that video, it would just look like two old friends celebrating New Year's Eve. Innocent, harmless. "How was work?" I asked, desperate to fill the silence. "Busy. Someone vandalized 3 stations downtown. Had to review hours of CCTV footage." Malcolm's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. "Amazing what cameras pick up these days. Every angle, every detail. People forget they're being watched." Something cold settled in my stomach. "That sounds tedious." "Not really. I find it fascinating, actually. The way you can piece together a whole story from different camera angles, different timestamps, like putting together a puzzle." He glanced at me briefly before returning his attention to the road. "Most people think they're invisible, but they're not. Everything leaves a digital trail these days." I forced a laugh. "You make it sound very CSI." "Reality is often more interesting than television." Malcolm turned into our parking garage, the concrete walls closing around us. "Take tonight, for example. I bet there are dozens of photos and videos from that party already uploaded to social media. People documenting every moment, every interaction, creating a permanent record without even thinking about it." My hands were trembling slightly as I unbuckled my seatbelt. People like to share their fun memories. "They do." Malcolm parked in our assigned space, but made no move to get out of the car. Instead, he pulled out his phone and began tapping at the screen. In fact, I'm sure if I checked right now, I'd find several posts already tagged with the party location. "Malcolm, what are you doing?" "Just curious." His fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency. "Let's see. Rooftop New Year's Eve. Downtown. Ah, here we go." He turned the phone toward me, and my heart stopped. Jessie's Instagram story filled the screen, a short video clip of the countdown kiss. Graham's hands in my hair, My body pressed against his, both of us laughing as we broke apart. The timestamp read 12:17 a.m. Interesting, Malcolm said mildly, studying the video. That's quite a kiss for two people who are just friends. Malcolm, I can explain. Can you? He saved the video to his phone with quick, efficient taps. I'd be very interested to hear that explanation. I watched him work, watched him screenshot Jesse's post, watched him forward the video to his own email account. Each action was deliberate, methodical, like he was building a case. It was just closure, I said finally. Graham and we never really got proper closure when we broke up. It was just one kiss, Malcolm. It didn't mean anything. Closure. He repeated the word like he was testing its weight. At midnight, on New Year's Eve, while your husband was working late to support his family. You're being dramatic. Am I? Malcolm pocketed his phone and finally got out of the car. I suppose we'll see. I followed him to the elevator, my heels clicking against the concrete floor. The sound echoed in the empty garage, sharp and guilty. Malcolm pressed the button for our floor and stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at the floor numbers as they climbed. How long? He asked quietly. How long what? How long have you been seeing him again? I'm not seeing him. The lie felt thick on my tongue. Tonight was the first time I've talked to Graham in months. Malcolm nodded slowly. So this was spontaneous? You just happened to run into your ex-boyfriend at a party he helped organize and spontaneously decided you needed closure? Yes. Interesting. The elevator doors opened and Malcolm stepped out first. Because according to his Instagram, Graham has checked into the same coffee shop in the Arts District 9 times in the past 3 months. Always on weekday afternoons. Always between 2 and 4 p.m. My blood turned to ice. So, it's probably near his office. His office is downtown. The coffee shop is 12 miles away. Malcolm unlocked our apartment door with steady hands. But it's only 3 blocks from your gym. I followed him inside, my mind racing. How did he know about the coffee shop? How did he know Graham's check-in patterns? You've been stalking his social media. I've been paying attention. Malcolm hung his jacket in the coat closet with mechanical precision. Something I should have done months ago, apparently. He walked to the living room, and I noticed immediately that something was different. The wedding photos that normally lined the mantelpiece were gone. Our engagement picture, the candid shot from our honeymoon, the formal portrait from our 5th anniversary, all missing. Where are our pictures? Safe, Malcolm said simply. Along with your jewelry, your grandmother's china, and anything else that might accidentally get broken during our upcoming discussions. What discussions? Malcolm, you're scaring me. He turned to face me fully for the first time since we'd left the party. His eyes were calm, almost clinical, like he was looking at a stranger. Am I? You're not scared of your husband, Eirlys. You're scared of getting caught. Caught doing what? I kissed an old friend at midnight on New Year's Eve. That's not a crime. No, it's not. Malcolm sat down in his leather recliner, the one I'd always hated because it didn't match our decor. But adultery is grounds for divorce in this state, especially when it's documented so thoroughly. Adultery? It was one kiss. Was it? Malcolm pulled out his phone again. Because I'm looking at our joint credit card statement right now, and I see some interesting charges. Bistro Luna, January 15th, 2 p.m. Cafe Artemis, January 22nd, 3:15 p.m. The Garden Spot, February 3rd, 2:30 p.m. Each date hit me like a physical blow. He knew. Somehow, he knew everything. Those were work lunches, I said weakly. With whom? Because according to your work calendar, which syncs to our shared Google account, you were at the gym during all of those times. Malcolm's voice remained perfectly calm, perfectly reasonable. Funny thing about gyms, they don't usually serve lobster bisque and champagne cocktails. I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly unsteady. Malcolm, please, let me explain. I'm listening. But what could I say? That I'd been meeting Graham for months? That those work lunches had been the highlight of my weeks? That I'd been lying about the gym, about working late, about needing space to think? That I'd fallen back in love with a man who made me feel beautiful and important and alive? "It's not what you think," I said finally. "What I think," Malcolm said, standing up from his chair, "is that my wife has been having an affair for the past 4 months. What I think is that she deliberately gave me the wrong time for tonight's party so she could spend time with her lover. What I think is that she kissed him at midnight while I was working late to pay for the dress she wore to seduce him. That's not what I think," he continued, his voice rising slightly for the first time, "is that she's been lying to me, to our daughter, and to herself about what this is. And what I think is that it's time for some consequences." He walked to the guest bedroom and pulled out a key I'd never seen before. The lock clicked open, and he disappeared inside. When he emerged, he was carrying a manila folder thick with papers. "What is that?" "Documentation." Malcolm set the folder on the coffee table between us. "Timestamps, credit card receipts, social media screenshots, location data from your phone's GPS. Everything I need to file for divorce on grounds of adultery." I stared at the folder like it was a snake coiled to strike. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." Malcolm sat back down, his hands folded calmly in his lap. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I was that stupid, that oblivious?" I thought... I stopped, because the truth was too ugly to speak aloud. I had thought he was stupid. I'd thought he was too boring, too predictable, too focused on his mundane job to pay attention to what I was doing. "You thought I wouldn't care," Malcolm finished for me. "You thought you could have your cake and eat it too. Keep the stable husband at home while you played with your exciting ex-boyfriend." "It wasn't like that." "Wasn't it?" Malcolm opened the folder and pulled out a printed screenshot. "This is from your phone's location history, December 18th, 2:47 p.m. You told me you were at the gym. Your phone says you were at the Marriott downtown for 3 hours. My mouth went dry. The Marriott. The afternoon Graham had surprised me with a room, said he wanted to talk somewhere private. We'd talked all right, among other things. "Malcolm, please. There's more." He pulled out another paper. "Text messages, recovered from your phone's cloud backup. Can't wait to see you again. You make me feel alive. That afternoon was perfect. I love you. Malcolm suspects nothing. We're safe." Each quote was like a dagger to my chest. I deleted those messages, been so careful to clear my history. How had he recovered them? "You've been spying on me." "I've been paying attention to my wife. There's a difference." Malcolm's voice was deadly calm. "Did you know that when you delete text messages, they're not really gone? They're backed up to the cloud automatically. Did you know that your location services track everywhere you go, every day? Did you know that credit card companies keep detailed records of every purchase, including the exact time and location?" I hadn't known any of that. I'd thought I was being clever, careful. I'd thought I was in control. "What do you want?" I whispered. "I want a divorce," Malcolm said simply. "I want full custody of Niev. I want you out of this apartment by the end of the month. And I want you to understand that this isn't a negotiation. You can't take my daughter away from me." "Can't I?" Malcolm pulled out another document. "Family court judges don't look favorably on parents who engage in extramarital affairs, especially when those affairs are documented as thoroughly as yours." I stared at him, this man I'd been married to for 8 years, and realized I'd never really known him at all. The quiet, methodical husband I'd dismissed as boring was methodically destroying my life with the same careful precision he brought to everything else. "Malcolm, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can—" "No." His voice cut through my pleading like a blade. "We can't. You made your choice, Eirlys. You chose Graham. Now live with the consequences." He stood up and walked toward the master bedroom, leaving the folder of evidence on the coffee table like a loaded gun. "Where are you going?" "To bed. I have work in the morning." He paused in the doorway. "Oh, and Eirlys, I'd avoid calling Graham tonight if I were you. His wife might answer." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my marriage and the terrible realization that the boring, predictable husband I'd betrayed was far more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the couch with Malcolm's folder of evidence, reading through every damning piece of documentation he'd compiled. Credit card statements with charges highlighted in yellow. Screenshots of text messages I'd thought were safely deleted. A printed timeline of my gym visits, cross-referenced with Graham's social media check-ins, showing a pattern so obvious I couldn't believe I'd thought we were being subtle. At 6 a.m., Malcolm emerged from the bedroom dressed for work, his hair still damp from the shower. He moved through the morning routine with his usual efficiency: coffee, toast, checking his phone for transit alerts. He didn't look at me once. "Malcolm, we need to talk about this." "No, we don't." He poured coffee into his travel mug, added cream with measured precision. "I've said everything I need to say." "What about Neve? What are we going to tell her?" That made him pause. Our 8-year-old daughter was still asleep in her room, blissfully unaware that her world was about to implode. "We're going to tell her the truth, that Mommy made some bad choices, and now Daddy and Mommy are going to live in different places." "She'll be devastated." "Yes, she will. That's something you should have considered before you decided to have an affair." Malcolm's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. "I'll be working late tonight. I suggest you use the time to find a lawyer. You're going to need one." He left without kissing me goodbye, without even looking back. I heard the front door close, the deadbolt turn, and then silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Graham. "Last night was perfect. When can I see you again?" I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. Perfect. He thought last night was perfect. He had no idea what it had cost me. Niamh wandered out of her bedroom an hour later, still in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Where's Daddy?" "Work, sweetheart. He had to leave early." I forced a smile and pulled her onto my lap. "How about pancakes for breakfast?" "With chocolate chips." "With chocolate chips." As I mixed batter and heated the griddle, I tried to imagine how to explain to my daughter that her family was falling apart. How do you tell an 8-year-old that Mommy kissed another man, and now Daddy wants a divorce? How do you make a child understand that love isn't always enough to keep a family together? My phone rang while Niamh was eating her pancakes. Jessie's name flashed on the screen. "Hey girl, how's your head this morning?" Jessie's voice was bright and cheerful, completely oblivious to the catastrophe she'd helped document. "Fine. Listen, about that video you took last night." "Oh my God, wasn't that the sweetest thing? You and Graham look so romantic. I posted it to my story, but I can send you the full video if you want. It's seriously like something out of a movie." My stomach clenched. "You posted it?" "Just to my Instagram story. Don't worry, it's set to expire in 24 hours. But I tagged you and Graham, so all your mutual friends can see it. Everyone's going to be so jealous of how gorgeous you looked." Tagged. She'd tagged us, which meant everyone in our social circle, including people who knew Malcolm, would see it. "Jessie, I need you to delete that video." "What? Why? It's beautiful." "Because I'm married and it's going to cause problems." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Oh, shit. I didn't think... I mean, it was just a New Year's kiss, right? Harmless fun. It wasn't harmless. Malcolm saw it. He's not happy. But you guys have been having problems for months. Everyone knows that. And you and Graham have so much history together. We all thought... Jessie trailed off. "Thought what?" "Well, that maybe you were finally going to do something about it. You've been miserable with Malcolm, Eirlys. Everyone can see it. And Graham is so much more exciting, so much more your type. We all figured it was just a matter of time." I closed my eyes, feeling sick. If our friends had been expecting this, if they'd been watching and waiting for me to leave Malcolm for Graham, then our affair had been even less secret than I'd realized. Please just delete the video, Jessie. Please. Okay, I'll delete it. But honey, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this is the push you needed to finally be honest about what you want. What I wanted. 24 hours ago, I'd thought I knew exactly what I wanted. I'd wanted excitement, passion, someone who made me feel beautiful and desired. I'd wanted Graham's confident smile, an expensive cologne, and the way he made me feel like the most important person in the room. Now I wanted my marriage back. I wanted to undo that kiss, to go back to the safety of my boring, predictable life with my boring, predictable husband who had turned out to be neither boring nor predictable at all. I have to go, I told Jessie. Niev needs me. I hung up and immediately called Graham. It went straight to voicemail. Graham, it's me. We need to talk. Call me back as soon as you get this. He didn't call back. By noon, I was panicking. I tried texting him, but the messages showed as delivered but not read. Either his phone was dead, or he was ignoring me. At 2 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Eirlys Davenant? Yes? This is Patricia Wells from Henderson, Wells and Associates. I'm calling on behalf of my client, Malcolm Davenant. I understand you'll be needing legal representation for your upcoming divorce proceedings. The world tilted sideways. Malcolm had already hired a lawyer who was calling me, who somehow had my number. What? Mrs. Davenant, I'm required to inform you that my client will be filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. I'm also required to inform you that he's seeking full custody of your minor child and spousal support. I strongly recommend you retain counsel immediately. Wait, spousal support? He wants me to pay him. Mrs. Davenant, you're a loan officer at First National Credit Union with a salary of $62,000 annually. Your husband is a transit inspector earning $48,000 annually. Under state law, the higher-earning spouse may be required to pay support, especially when that spouse is found to be at fault for the dissolution of the marriage. I sank onto the couch, my legs giving out. Not only was Malcolm taking my daughter and my home, he was going to make me pay him for the privilege. This is insane. It was one kiss. Mrs. Davenant, my client has provided extensive documentation of a 4-month extramarital relationship, including hotel receipts, restaurant charges, text messages, and video evidence of public displays of affection. This is significantly more than one kiss. 4 months. He knew about all of it. Every lunch, every stolen afternoon, every lie I'd told. I need to call you back, I managed. Of course. But Mrs. Davenant, don't wait too long. My client is very motivated to move forward quickly. I hung up and immediately tried Graham again. Still voicemail. Graham, please call me back. This is an emergency. Malcolm knows everything. He's filing for divorce. He has evidence, documentation. We need to talk about this. At 4 p.m., Clara called. Eirlys, honey, I just saw Jessie's Instagram story. Are you okay? Did you see it before she deleted it? She deleted it? Why would she? Oh no. Malcolm saw it, didn't he? He saw it. He recorded it. He has screenshots. The words tumbled out of me in a rush. Clara, he knows everything. About Graham, about the lunches, about all of it. He's filing for divorce. He wants to take Niev away from me. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Clara? I'm here. I'm just processing. Eirlys, how long have you been seeing Graham? It's not what you think. We were just talking, just having lunch. It wasn't serious. But you've been lying to Malcolm about it. I didn't want to hurt him. By lying to him, by sneaking around behind his back, by kissing another man at a New Year's Eve party. Clara's voice was getting sharper, more judgmental. Jesus, Eirlys, what were you thinking? I was thinking that I deserved to be happy. I was thinking that maybe there was more to life than mortgage payments and parent-teacher conferences and pretending to be satisfied with a man who treats me like a roommate. Malcolm loves you. Malcolm ignores me. He comes home from work, eats dinner, watches TV, and goes to bed. When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time he told me I was beautiful, or took me somewhere special, or made me feel like I mattered? So you decided to find that with your ex-boyfriend instead of working on your marriage. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Graham and we just started talking, and it felt so good to have someone really listen to me, really see me. And then it became more, and I know it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. You could have stopped. You chose not to. Clara's voice was cold now, disappointed. You chose to lie to your husband and sneak around and risk your family for what? A few exciting afternoons with a man who's also married, by the way. Graham is getting divorced. Is he? Or is that just what he told you? The question hit me like a slap. Graham had mentioned problems with his wife, said they were living separate lives. That divorce was inevitable. But I'd never seen any actual evidence of it. I'd never met with lawyers or seen papers or heard about custody arrangements. He wouldn't lie about that. Wouldn't he? Eirlys, think about this logically. Graham works for the city council. He has access to event planning, guest lists, permits. Don't you think it's a little convenient that he just happened to be organising a New Year's Eve party? That he just happened to run into you at all those coffee shops near your gym? My blood went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe this wasn't as spontaneous as you thought. Maybe Graham has been planning this for a while. I thought about all those coincidental meetings, how Graham always seemed to know exactly when I'd be at the gym, exactly which cafe I'd choose for lunch. I'd thought it was fate, serendipity, but what if it had been calculation? I have to go, I said, hanging up before Clara could say anything else. I tried Graham's number one more time. This time, someone answered. Hello? A woman's voice, crisp and professional. My heart stopped. I'm sorry, I think I have the wrong number. I was trying to reach Graham Roach. You have the right number. This is his wife, Penelope, and you must be Eirlys. The world went completely silent except for the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I don't know what you mean. Of course you do. You're the woman my husband has been having an affair with. The one he kissed at the New Year's Eve party last night. The one whose husband sent me a very interesting video this morning. Malcolm had contacted Graham's wife. Of course he had. Methodical, thorough. Malcolm wouldn't just destroy my life, he'd destroy Graham's too. Mrs. Roach, I can explain. No need. The video explains everything quite clearly, as do the credit card receipts my husband thought he was hiding, and the hotel charges, and the text messages he was careless enough to leave on his iPad. Where is Graham? Graham is meeting with his lawyer, trying to figure out how to minimize the damage to his career. Apparently, using city resources to facilitate an extramarital affair is grounds for termination. Who knew? The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in horror. Graham's career was in jeopardy. His marriage was over, and it was all because of that one perfect, terrible kiss at midnight. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Malcolm. Don't try to contact me directly. All communication should go through my lawyer. You have 30 days to vacate the apartment. Custody hearing is scheduled for February 15th. I suggest you use the time to prepare. 30 days. I had 30 days to find a place to live, hire a lawyer, and figure out how to explain to my daughter why her family was falling apart. I looked around the apartment that had been my home for 5 years, at the furniture we'd chosen together, the pictures of our family that Malcolm had hidden away. In less than 24 hours, I'd lost my husband, my home, and possibly my daughter. All for 43 seconds of passion that I'd thought would give me closure. Instead, it had given me the end of everything I'd ever cared about. The next few days blurred together in a haze of lawyer consultations, frantic phone calls, and sleepless nights. I'd hired Rebecca Martinez, a divorce attorney recommended by a coworker, but even she seemed skeptical of my chances. "The evidence against you is extensive," she said during our first meeting, spreading Malcolm's documentation across her desk like tarot cards predicting doom. Video evidence, financial records, recovered text messages, witness statements. Your husband has built an airtight case. Witness statements? Rebecca pulled out a manila folder I hadn't seen before. 4 people from the New Year's Eve party have provided sworn statements describing your behavior that night. Apparently, your husband reached out to them through LinkedIn. My hand shook as I read the first statement, signed by someone named David Chen, who I barely remembered meeting at the party. I observed Mrs. Davenant and Mr. Roach engaged in intimate conversation for approximately 45 minutes prior to midnight. Mrs. Davenant appeared to be watching the entrance repeatedly, and when I asked if she was expecting someone, she said her husband was working late, but that she was exactly where she wanted to be. The physical contact between Mrs. Davenant and Mr. Roche was clearly romantic in nature, including hand-holding, close dancing, and prolonged eye contact. The midnight kiss was initiated by Mrs. Davenant and lasted approximately 30 to 40 seconds. Both parties appeared familiar and comfortable with the physical intimacy, suggesting this was not their first romantic encounter. The second statement was from Maria Santos, a woman I'd chatted with briefly near the bar. Mrs. Davenant mentioned that her husband didn't understand her need for excitement and that she sometimes felt like she was wasting her life, being married to someone so predictable. When I suggested she should talk to her husband about these feelings, she laughed and said it was too late for that. She spent most of the evening with Mr. Roche and seemed very comfortable with him, referring to him as someone who really gets me, and mentioning they had been reconnecting recently. The third statement was from Jessie, my own friend who had taken the video. I have known Eirlys Davenant for 3 years, and she has frequently expressed dissatisfaction with her marriage. She has mentioned feeling unappreciated and bored, and has specifically talked about her ex-boyfriend Graham Roach multiple times, saying she sometimes wondered what her life would have been like if she had married him instead. On the night of December 31st, Eirlys seemed excited and nervous, and mentioned that she had given her husband the wrong start time for the party because she wanted to have some fun before he arrived. She specifically sought out Mr. Roche at the party and spent the majority of the evening in his company. The kiss at midnight was clearly mutual and romantic, and both parties seemed very happy afterward. Eirlys did not seem surprised or upset by the kiss, suggesting it was planned or at least expected. The fourth statement was the most damning of all. It was from Clara. I have been friends with Eirlys Davenant for 5 years, and I have observed concerning changes in her behavior over the past several months. She has been secretive about her activities, claiming to be at the gym during times when she was clearly elsewhere. She has made numerous negative comments about her husband, describing him as boring, predictable, and emotionally unavailable. She has mentioned her ex-boyfriend Graham Roach frequently and positively, often comparing him favorably to her husband. On multiple occasions, she has expressed regret about her marriage and wondered aloud whether she made the right choice. When I confronted her about her behavior at the New Year's Eve party, she became defensive and admitted to having an ongoing relationship with Mr. Roche, justifying it by claiming she deserved to be happy. She showed no remorse for her actions and seemed primarily concerned about the consequences to herself rather than the impact on her family. I stared at Clara's signature, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. My friend had not only turned against me, she'd provided a detailed character assassination that painted me as a selfish, manipulative adulteress. How could she do this? I whispered. Mrs. Davenant, these people are under oath. Lying in a sworn statement is perjury, a felony. They're telling the truth as they see it. Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. The question is, how do we counter this testimony? I don't know. I mean, some of it is taken out of context, but most of it is accurate. I nodded miserably. I had complained about Malcolm to my friends. I had been secretive about my meetings with Graham. I had given Malcolm the wrong party time deliberately, and I had initiated that kiss, had been planning it from the moment Graham suggested we needed closure. What about character witnesses for me? People who can testify that I'm a good mother, a good person. Rebecca flipped through her notes. We can certainly try, but your husband's attorney has been thorough. They've already contacted most of your mutual friends and several of your co-workers. Many of them have declined to provide statements on your behalf. Declined? Or provided statements supporting your husband instead. Rebecca pulled out another folder. Your co-worker, Janet Morrison, describes you as increasingly distracted and secretive over the past few months. She mentions that you frequently took long lunches and personal calls during work hours, and that you seemed guilty and nervous when questioned about your activities. Janet barely knows me. We work in different departments. Your neighbour, Mrs. Patterson, provided a statement about loud arguments she overheard from your apartment, during which you allegedly called your husband pathetic and said you were done pretending to be happy. I remembered that fight. It had been about money. Malcolm wanted to refinance the mortgage to get a better rate, and I'd accused him of being obsessed with boring financial details instead of focusing on our relationship. I'd said a lot of things I regretted, but I'd never imagined the neighbours were listening. What about my mother, my family? Your mother provided a statement, but it's not particularly helpful. Rebecca handed me another paper. She acknowledges that you've been unhappy in your marriage and that you've expressed doubts about your compatibility with Malcolm. She describes your husband as cold and controlling and says she's not surprised you sought affection elsewhere, but she also admits she's concerned about your judgment and your ability to prioritize your daughter's needs. Even my own mother was hedging her bets, providing just enough support to avoid abandoning me completely while distancing herself from my choices. This is a disaster, I said. It's challenging, Rebecca agreed, but not impossible. We can argue that you made a mistake, that you're remorseful, that you're committed to being a good mother, regardless of what happens to your marriage. We can push for joint custody and argue that your personal relationship with Mr. Roach doesn't impact your parenting abilities. What about the spousal support? Will I really have to pay Malcolm? Probably. You earn more money, and the adultery makes you the at-fault party. The court will likely order temporary support during the proceedings, and possibly permanent support depending on the final settlement. I left Rebecca's office feeling like I was drowning. In the span of a week, I'd gone from a woman having a secret affair to a pariah being abandoned by friends, family, and co-workers. The life I'd built over 8 years was crumbling, and everyone seemed eager to help it fall. My phone rang as I was walking to my car. Graham's name flashed on the screen. "Finally," I said, answering immediately. "I've been trying to reach you for days." "I know, I couldn't call. Penelope took my phone, and my lawyer advised me not to contact you directly." Graham's voice sounded strained, exhausted. "Eirlys, this is a disaster. My career is over. The Ethics Committee is launching a full investigation into my use of city resources. They're going through every event I've ever organized, every guest list I've ever managed." "What about us? What about everything we talked about?" There was a long pause. "What about it? You said you loved me. You said you wanted to be with me, that we deserved a second chance." That was before our spouses hired lawyers and started documenting everything. That was before I realized how much this was going to cost both of us. "So you're just giving up? Walking away?" "Eirlys, be realistic. I'm probably going to lose my job. Penelope is going to take me for everything I'm worth in the divorce. I can't afford to keep fighting for a relationship that's already destroyed 2 marriages." "But you said..." "I said a lot of things, in the heat of the moment, when it felt romantic and exciting. But this isn't a romance novel, Eirlys. This is real life, with real consequences, and I can't afford those consequences anymore." "So I'm supposed to lose everything alone? My husband, my daughter, my home, my friends, all of that is just collateral damage for your midlife crisis?" You made your own choices. Don't blame me for the consequences. The line went dead, leaving me standing in the parking garage, staring at my phone in disbelief. Graham was abandoning me. After months of telling me I deserved better, that we were meant to be together, that our love was worth fighting for, he was walking away the moment things got difficult. I drove home in a daze, barely paying attention to traffic. The apartment felt like a mausoleum. Malcolm's presence erased, his belongings gone, even his coffee mug missing from the kitchen sink. He'd been systematically removing himself from our shared life, leaving me alone with the wreckage. Niamh was at my mother's house for the weekend, spared from witnessing the complete collapse of her parents' marriage. I'd told her that Daddy and I were having some problems and needed some time to figure things out. She'd nodded solemnly, her 8-year-old mind trying to process information that didn't make sense to her. "Are you getting divorced like Tommy's parents?" she'd asked. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. Will I still live with both of you? We'll figure it out, baby. The most important thing is that Daddy and I both love you very much, and that's never going to change." But even as I'd said the words, I'd known they weren't entirely true. Malcolm might still love Niamh, but his love for me had died somewhere between that midnight kiss and the moment he'd started building his case against me. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch with my laptop, scrolling through social media for the first time since New Year's Eve. Jesse's Instagram story had expired, but the damage was done. I could see it in the comments on my other posts, in the way mutual friends had stopped liking my photos, in the sudden silence from people who used to chat with me regularly. Clara had unfriended me entirely. So had 3 other women from our book club. Janet from work had blocked me. Even my cousin Sarah, who lived across the country and barely knew Malcolm, had stopped responding to my messages. I was being systematically erased from my own social circle, branded as a cheater and a homewrecker by people who had never bothered to understand what my marriage had really been like. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Patricia Wells, Mr. Davenant's attorney. Please be advised that my client will be seeking an expedited custody hearing due to concerns about your current living situation and emotional stability. We have documentation of erratic behavior and poor judgment that may impact your ability to provide a stable environment for your daughter. I strongly recommend you retain counsel immediately if you haven't already done so." Erratic behavior, poor judgment, emotional instability. They were building a case that I was an unfit mother, using my affair as evidence that I couldn't be trusted with my own child. I thought about calling Rebecca, but what could she do? The evidence against me was overwhelming, provided by people I'd trusted, documented by a husband I'd underestimated. I'd walked into Malcolm's trap willingly, eagerly, thinking I was finally taking control of my own happiness. Instead, I'd handed him everything he needed to destroy me. The apartment felt smaller and quieter with each passing hour. By midnight, I was sitting in the dark, staring out at the city lights and wondering how a single kiss had unraveled my entire life so completely. Tomorrow, I would have to start over. New apartment, new lawyer, new life as a divorced single mother who might only see her daughter on weekends. All because I'd convinced myself I deserved more than the stable, predictable love of a man who had turned out to be far more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd wanted excitement, unpredictability, passion. Malcolm had given me all 3, just not in the way I'd expected. He'd given me the most exciting, unpredictable, passionate destruction I'd ever experienced. And he was just getting started. The custody hearing was scheduled for February 15th, exactly 6 weeks after the New Year's Eve kiss that had started this avalanche. I spent those weeks in a studio apartment across town, seeing Niamh only during supervised visits at a family services center, while Malcolm's lawyer argued that I was emotionally unstable and potentially dangerous. The evidence kept mounting. Security footage from the Marriott Hotel showing Graham and me entering and leaving together. credit card records proving I'd lied about my whereabouts dozens of times. Even my browser history, which Malcolm had somehow accessed, showing searches for how to delete text messages permanently and can spouses track location history. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source: my own daughter. "Your Honor," Patricia Wells said, standing before the family court judge with a manila folder in her hands, "I'd like to submit into evidence some drawings made by the minor child, Niamh Davenant, during her sessions with the court-appointed child psychologist." Rebecca objected, but Judge Harrison allowed the drawings to be entered. I watched in horror as Patricia held up a series of crayon pictures that Niamh had made during her therapy sessions. The first drawing showed a house with 3 stick figures, a tall one labeled Daddy, a smaller one labeled Me, and a medium-sized one labeled Mommy, standing far away from the other 2, with a big red X drawn over her. The second drawing showed 2 houses. Daddy and Niamh were in one house, smiling. Mommy was in another house with a man labeled Bad Man, and both figures had angry faces. The third drawing was the most devastating of all. It showed a family at a party, with Mommy kissing someone who wasn't Daddy, while Daddy stood alone, crying. Dr. Patterson, the child psychologist, has interpreted these drawings as evidence of the child's awareness of her mother's infidelity and her emotional response to the family's dissolution, Patricia continued. In her professional opinion, Niamh feels betrayed by her mother's actions and associates her mother with instability and poor judgment. I wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that Niamh was 8 years old and couldn't possibly understand the complexities of adult relationships. But the drawings spoke for themselves, and they told a story of a little girl who felt abandoned by her mother's choices. Additionally, Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Davenant has continued to engage in deceptive behavior even after the affair was discovered. Patricia pulled out another document. Phone records show that she attempted to contact Mr. Roche 17 times in the week following New Year's Eve, despite knowing that this contact was causing distress to multiple parties. She also deleted her social media accounts and changed her phone number, behavior consistent with someone trying to hide evidence or avoid accountability. Rebecca stood to cross-examine, but the damage was done. Every piece of evidence painted me as a selfish, manipulative woman who put her own desires above her family's well-being. "Mrs. Davenant," Judge Harrison said, looking at me over his glasses, "I've reviewed all the evidence in this case, including video footage of your conduct on New Year's Eve, financial records showing a pattern of deception, witness statements from multiple parties, and psychological evaluation of your daughter. I'm troubled by what I see. Your Honor, I made a mistake, but I love my daughter." "Mrs. Davenant, this wasn't a mistake. This was a sustained pattern of deceptive behavior over several months, culminating in a public display of infidelity that has clearly traumatized your child. The evidence shows that you prioritized your personal desires over your family's stability and your daughter's emotional well-being." Judge Harrison shuffled through the papers on his desk, each one another nail in my coffin. "Furthermore, the court is concerned about your judgment and decision-making abilities. You engaged in an extramarital affair with a married man, used marital funds to facilitate this affair, lied repeatedly to your spouse and friends, and showed no remorse when confronted with your behavior. These actions demonstrate a pattern of selfishness and poor judgment that raises serious questions about your fitness as a parent. Your Honor, please. Mrs. Davenant, I'm awarding primary custody of Niamh Davenant to her father, Malcolm Davenant. You will have supervised visitation every other weekend, pending completion of mandatory counseling and a psychological evaluation. You will also pay child support in the amount of $800 per month and spousal support in the amount of $600 per month for a period of 3 years. The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot, and my world collapsed completely. Primary custody to Malcolm. Supervised visitation for me. $1,400 a month in support payments that would leave me barely able to afford my studio apartment. I stumbled out of the courtroom in a daze, Rebecca's hand on my elbow guiding me toward the exit. In the hallway, I saw Malcolm standing with his lawyer, his face calm and satisfied. He'd won everything he'd wanted: our daughter, our home, financial support, and complete vindication in the eyes of the law. "Malcolm, please," I said, approaching him despite Rebecca's warning shake of her head. "She's my daughter too. We can work something out, can't we?" He looked at me with the same expression he might wear when examining a particularly unpleasant piece of evidence at work. Clinical, detached, slightly disgusted. "You should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair," he said quietly. "You should have thought about Niev before you kissed another man at a party where everyone could see. You should have thought about our family before you chose your own selfish desires over everything else. I know I made mistakes, but..." "Mistakes?" Malcolm's voice rose slightly, the first real emotion I'd heard from him in weeks. "Lying to me for months wasn't a mistake. Spending our money on hotel rooms with your lover wasn't a mistake. Kissing him in public while I was working to support our family wasn't a mistake. Those were choices, Eirlys. Deliberate, calculated choices." "Malcolm, please." "No." He turned away from me, his lawyer already guiding him toward the exit. "You made your choice. Now live with the consequences." I watched him walk away, this man I'd been married to for 8 years, and realized that I'd never really known him at all. The quiet, methodical husband I'd dismissed as boring had systematically destroyed my life with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a hunter. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca tried to console me. "We can appeal the custody decision. The supervised visitation is probably temporary. Once you complete the counseling and psychological evaluation..." "How long?" I interrupted. "How long before I can have my daughter back?" "It depends on the evaluation results and your progress in counseling. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year. The court wants to see consistent evidence of improved judgment and emotional stability." "A year." My daughter would be 9 years old before I could have unsupervised visits with her. She would spend her formative years thinking of Malcolm as her primary parent and me as the unstable mother who destroyed their family. I drove back to my studio apartment in a fog of grief and rage. The space felt like a prison cell, 400 square feet of beige walls and cheap furniture, nothing like the home I'd shared with Malcolm and Niev. I'd gone from a comfortable 3-bedroom apartment with hardwood floors and granite countertops to a glorified dorm room with a Murphy bed and a kitchenette. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Heard about the hearing? I'm sorry, sweetheart. You can always come stay with me in Florida if you need to start over somewhere new." Start over. As if I could just pack up and leave, abandon my daughter and pretend none of this had happened. As if there was anywhere I could go where the internet wouldn't follow me, where the video of my midnight kiss wouldn't eventually surface to haunt me. I opened my laptop and did something I'd been avoiding for weeks. I Googled my own name. The results were devastating. The video Jesse had taken was everywhere, reposted to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Someone had even created a meme out of it, with captions like, "When you think your husband isn't watching," and "How to destroy your marriage in 43 seconds. The comments were brutal. "What a disgusting cheater. I feel so bad for her husband. This is why men don't trust women anymore. She's probably been cheating the whole time. That poor little girl. Having a mother like this is going to mess her up for life. I hope the husband takes her for everything she's worth. She deserves to lose it all." My name was permanently associated with infidelity, with betrayal, with the destruction of a family. Future employers would Google me and find this video. Future landlords, potential friends, anyone who searched for Eirlys Davenant would see me at my worst moment, frozen forever in those 43 seconds of selfish passion. I closed the laptop and poured myself a glass of wine, then another. The alcohol dulled the sharp edges of my grief, but couldn't erase the fundamental truth. I had destroyed everything I'd ever cared about for a man who had abandoned me the moment things got difficult. Graham was gone, his career ruined but his reputation salvageable. He could move to another city, start over, rebuild his life. Men always seemed to recover from these scandals faster than women. But I was stuck here, paying $1,400 a month to the husband I'd betrayed, seeing my daughter only under supervision, living in a studio apartment while my former friends shared the video of my downfall as entertainment. The worst part was that I couldn't even blame Malcolm for his revenge. Everything he'd done had been legal, methodical, justified. He'd simply documented my choices and let the consequences play out naturally. I thought I was the one in control, the one making decisions about my own happiness. Instead, I'd been dancing to his tune from the moment he'd started building his case, giving him everything he needed to destroy me completely. The boring, predictable husband I'd betrayed had turned out to be the most dangerous man I'd ever met, and the most patient. He'd waited until I'd given him enough rope to hang myself, then pulled the trap door with surgical precision. As I sat alone in my studio apartment, drinking wine and watching the city lights blur through tears, I finally understood the full scope of his revenge. He hadn't just taken my daughter, my home, and my financial security. He'd taken my future. 3 months after the custody hearing, I was barely surviving on support, riding buses past co-workers who treated me like a warning label. Supervised visits with Neve were worse. One-word answers, drawings without me, and the same question, when can I go back to Daddy? Then Channel 7 called. A New Year's Eve clip of me kissing Graham had gone viral, 2 million views, and they wanted me as a lesson. I refused, but the story ran anyway. That night I called Malcolm. He wouldn't meet, wouldn't comfort, only corrected me. He hadn't ruined my life, I had, and he'd documented it so I couldn't rewrite myself as the victim. Video, texts, money trails, witnesses, proof that my betrayal was choice, not accident. When I asked about Neve, he said counseling was helping, and my path back depended on what I did next. So I stopped running. I started therapy, owned every lie, passed the evaluation, and returned to court months later with progress reports. Judge Harrison approved a gradual move to unsupervised visits. In the hallway, Neve didn't rush to me, but she didn't hide either. "Hi, Mummy," she said, small, cautious, a beginning. I took her hand, knowing redemption would be earned.